to hand things over to Abena Ansari, who's an associate professor of modern African affairs and history here at Stony Brook, and who envisioned today's event and brought together this multiplicity of voices that you're going to hear today. Abena's research spans questions of diaspora, human rights, transitional justice in Africa and the African diaspora. And her monograph book is called Truth Without Reconciliation, A Human Rights History of Ghana, which was published by the University of Pennsylvania Press. And with that, I'll turn it over to Abena.
We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality. Did you ever stop to think that you can't leave for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? You get up in the morning and go to the bathroom and reach over for a sponge, and that's handed to you by a Pacific Islander. You reach for a bar of soap, and that's given to you at the hands of a Frenchman. And then you go in the kitchen to drink your coffee for the morning. That's poured in your cup by a South American. Or maybe you want tea. That's poured in your cup by a Chinese. Or maybe you're desirous of having cocoa for breakfast, and that's poured in your cup by a West African. And then you reach over for your toast, and that's given to you at the hands of an English-speaking farmer, not to mention the baker. And before you finish eating breakfast in the morning, you're dependent on more than half of the world. This is the way our universe is structured. It is its interrelated quality. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality.
Good evening, and welcome to all of you. I am Abena Ansari, and I'm an associate professor of Africana Studies and History here at Stony Brook. I'm speaking from Unkachug land on the south shore of Long Island in the area currently known as Brookhaven Hamlet, Bellport. I want to name and acknowledge that Stony Brook University is located on stolen Settlecott land. Welcome again to Waste Crisis, a symposium on global plastic and Long Island environmental justice. There are a number of organizations that I would like to thank for their partnership tonight. First, the Humanities Institute for hosting us. Special thanks to Adrian Unger and Dr. Susan Shekel. I also want to thank our encouraging co-sponsors, the Safina Institute and the Department of Africana Studies. I want to thank my co-organizers in this event, Claire Dana from the class of 2023, Christina Reed from the class of 2024, and Matthew Sarotkin, a master's student in the Department of Ecology and Evolution. You'll be hearing from them all later on. So how do we understand the global and local dimensions of a waste crisis? This spring is the 25th anniversary of the Marlboro 4000 garbage barge scandal. Marlborough 4000 was a ship filled with 3,000 tons of waste that set sail from Long Island in March 1987. The plan was to dump this waste by paying some other community somewhere else to accept it. Over the next 5 months, in the full view of the world, this barge was turned away from more than a dozen ports. Throughout the US South and around the world, no one was taking this waste. This barge was turned away from North Carolina, from Louisiana, from Texas, Cuba, and Mexico threatened to fire at the barge if it tried to dock. And eventually this barge returned to Long Island. The waste was incinerated and dumped at the then Islip landfill. Now, 1987 was also the year where a state assembly panel filed a lawsuit against Brookhaven Town and Suffolk County for dumping untreated sewage sludge right here at the Brookhaven landfill. 1987 was also the year where Brookhaven Town briefly banned Stony Brook from sending its waste to the town landfill in North Bellport and Yaphank because infectious and hazardous substances from the hospital were ending up in the landfill, a scant mile away from people's homes. So Long Island's waste crisis is not new. This has been a crisis decades in the making. Usually when we call a situation a crisis, it is a way to assert agency, right? We say crisis as a call to action, to say that a situation has become untenable. However, where waste is concerned, within Long Island and also elsewhere, the language of crisis is not always a way to transform an unjust waste system. This call of crisis has been used to rush through false solutions that simply foist the problem of waste onto someone else, thus making the waste crisis a permanent part of Long Island's geography. Crisis planning has been and is being used right now to justify massive waste transfer stations in communities with low life expectancy and high asthma rates. It is being used to brush the toxic incineration of plastics under the rug. Crisis planning leads our elected officials to claim that endlessly shipping waste by truck or by rail to low income and or marginalized communities in upstate New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, or anywhere else in the world is a solution. So how do we change this? How do we reclaim the language of crisis as a route to waste justice? Our panelists today have been chosen because they can bring us closer to understanding the contours of this waste crisis within Long Island and also around the world. First, I'm so thrilled to have Erica Cirino as our keynote speaker tonight. Erica is the communications manager at the Plastic Pollution Coalition. She has spent the last decade working as a science writer, an author, and an artist, exploring the intersection of the human and non-human worlds. Erica is best known for her widely published photojournalistic works that cut through plastic industry misinformation and injustice to deliver the often shocking and difficult truths about this most insidious substance. This includes her recent book, Thicker Than Water, The Quest for Solutions to the Plastic Crisis, Island Press 2021, in which she documents plastic across ecosystem and elements. She shares stories from primarily Black, Brown, Indigenous, and rural communities that are disproportionately harmed by industrial pollution globally. And she uncovers strategies that work to prevent plastic from causing further devastation to our planet and its inhabitants. Welcome, Erica. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me, Abena. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Erica Cirino. I'm speaking from Hammonasset Land in Eastern Connecticut at the moment. And I'm here to just give you a little primer before we hear from our fantastic panelists. Our world is awash in waste, and these are items and materials that we no longer want or need, and we discard in our trash and recycling bins. I feel like it's important that we get some kind of definition out there. I've dedicated the past 5 years of my life to studying the toxic aspects of our society's throwaway culture. So I have a few slides that we will kindly put up shortly. Bear with us for a second, please. And I think that it's on the back end. Yeah, here we go. Thank you so much, Adrian. So I'm going to share a few photos I've taken in my research on the plastic and waste crisis. And so just to connect you to something from which so many of us are frighteningly disconnected, and that is our waste. So these are just some questions to think about as we move forward, but do you know where your trash goes when you throw it away or place it in your recycling bin? Many people are surprised to learn that most of the trash that we throw away is not recycled, even though that's exactly what corporations that make consumer goods tell us to do. Not even when we bring it to the curb does it usually go to the right place, or the place that we think it should go. As Abena mentioned, here on Long Island, our waste follows pathways that lead to injustice all across the map, with a network of incinerators that burn town's waste into safe-saving, but no less toxic ash that's sent to one of a few ash fills, including the Brookhaven Landfill, to construction and demolition debris and clean fill landfills, and landfills that take a combination of waste. Like I said, the aforementioned Brookhaven Landfill. And some communities' waste is not shipped off the island. Some communities' waste is shipped off the island and upstate or out of state to be dumped in landfills or later incinerated. And along the way, waste so easily blows, flows, rolls, or travels from our waste collection pathways because it is so poorly contained. And waste we do. As we consume material goods, we tend to rapidly trash them, especially plastics. It's pretty ingenious for companies to sell products that are designed to be used for a short period of time before requiring replacement. Little of the material we set aside for recycling is actually recycled. It's more lucrative and logistically easier to burn trash in incinerators and throw the ash into landfills or ponds or dispose of it, often after being transported by rail or truck to another country. And this is a practice, as Abena also mentioned, shipping waste away. So countries, including the United States, the UK, and others, often wealthier countries with high GDP, they send it on cargo ships to countries typically in the global South. And we have to look at this as, not only an issue of pollution, but also the perpetuation of geopolitical relations that are steeped in colonialism and racism. And what's more, current methods of waste disposal contribute to the climate crisis through the release of additional greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. People who live on the fence lines of our waste pipeline are forced to carry additional and often quite severe health, emotional, and financial burdens associated with our modern industry-driven lifestyles, including the accelerating effects of climate change. And this includes, again, these are primarily communities of color, Indigenous communities, rural and low-income communities. And we see a clear pattern on Long Island and also across the United States and globally. Of course, there are different communities affected in different countries, and we have to account for cultural differences, but we see this pattern where Black and brown lives are just unfortunately not valued as they should be due to a systemic culture of racism, colonialism, and oppression. And this is just so intrinsically linked to the waste crisis. And the more that we take a look at these facts that I will present to you shortly, the more we can recognize this as a fundamental part of the crisis that we need to address, because pollution is not just pollution, it's also injustice. And plastics and many other materials that are produced in these industrial facilities that are disproportionately cited for communities of color and indigenous communities, as well as low income and rural communities. Again, these facilities are producing huge amounts, often, of toxic chemicals and toxic products. It's well known that this pollution does not mix well with wild animals and ecosystems. We've seen the consequences of the release of toxic chemicals into the environment. And so we also see these effects on people. There have been headlines recently in the news of dead whale found with 16 kilograms of plastic bags and wrappers inside their stomach, or a dead whale found with 40 kilograms of plastic bags in its stomach. But why haven't there been headlines talking about the urgent need to address environmental injustice and this assault on Black and brown lives? It's really unbelievable to me. And in my research, looking at this pattern, it's clear that industries and governments aiding industries in their industrialization of our planet are just aiding and abetting this highly racist system. And we see that a lot of the chemicals that are manufactured into plastics and manufactured into consumer goods that are primarily produced in Black and brown and low income and rural communities, these are toxics that are known to interfere with human hormones. We'll go to the next slide, please, which just shows you a few pieces of plastic up close. And so, as I mentioned before, plastic and other materials that are considered waste, they carry health implications. And so plastics in particular, they never break up benignly. They will only break up into these small pieces. And these small pieces of plastic you see before you are known to contain a slew of toxic chemicals that interfere with human hormones, can contribute to development of cancer, reproductive issues, immune system problems, and other health issues. These chemicals also very rapidly build up in the natural environment, harming wildlife and plants, and upset the balance of the ecosystems that we rely on to survive. So this is a grave issue as well, but if we consider the disproportionate impact on certain communities, we see that the risk is not equal. And plastics in particular have hit headlines recently. Actually, just in the past few weeks, scientists have found out that these plastic particles, like those that you see on the screen now, those particles, smaller size range, have been found in human bloodstreams and also in human lungs. And so our waste is literally colonizing our bodies. And that's a really big aspect of it, I think, to think about. And we look at these industrial, the industrial machine, or these big industries, and they really are very violent, racist, and colonial. And we need to talk about it, because this is something that we've just been not talking about enough, despite frontline communities speaking out for many, many decades. And so while the exact effects at this moment of these particles' presence in our bodies, plastic specifically, are not known, we do know that the toxic chemicals that I've described that are often found in plastics and many other consumer throwaway goods are things like phthalates, BPA, and PFAs, which offer qualities like flexibility, fire resistance, and other useful characteristics. These items are very convenient in many cases, but they are toxic, and we need to acknowledge that. These chemicals are widely known to circulate human blood. So imagine if there's a disproportionate impact on a specific community and they are forced to carry a higher chemical burden than those who are living further afield. This is something that we need to get on the table and get out there, because there's absolutely a dismal amount of research on frontline communities and the health impacts of these waste infrastructure developments, and also at the front of the pipeline where plastics and other wastes are actually produced. So we see all these chemicals that are entering our bodies and our environment. We know that they're not safe, and yet there's a pattern where certain communities are disproportionately affected, and these are the Black and Brown communities. So if, you know, our regulators are not regulating these chemicals in our widespread environment and not addressing the need of these communities, they're not doing their job. And we need to acknowledge that too, and demand accountability, because, you know, this is the story that people don't tell about plastics and about waste, and this needs to be told. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of run through again just some of these health risks. And I know that it's a horrible list, and I also want to acknowledge that, I mean, at least for me too, it's emotional to go through this. I used to live in an incinerator community, and to know the effects that these chemicals have on our bodies is absolutely shocking. Okay, so once a forever chemical, we'll call, which we call PFAs often, but other chemicals are long lasting as well. Once these enter our bodies, they do not quickly leave, and so they can also build up and cause a lot of terrible effects. There are any combination of tens of thousands of industrial produced chemicals, which are often derived from petrochemicals, and petrochemicals are derived from fossil fuels like gas and oil. And these are used to produce plastics and also used to coat other disposable products made from metal or paper. It gives them, again, those desirable qualities that we find convenient. And yet we found evidence in pregnant people's bodies that plastic can be passed to babies' fetuses through the placenta. And plastic is getting into us because it's widespread in our diets, from packaged food and bottled water to fruits and vegetables. We breathe in plastic in our homes and outdoors, and plastic particles are in the water we drink and in the oceans as well. And, you know, I'm just being clear, you know, these chemicals do not belong in consumer products. There are other ways to make material goods that are non-toxic, but it's simply cheaper not to do so. And so corporations overwhelmingly opt out of non-toxic options. Next slide, please. Again, just describing the health impact here. I'll just mention that these are art pieces that I've made, so these are not photographs. They are photographs of art. But on the right side, you'll see an image I made depicting a pregnant body with a fetus, and the fetus is made from microplastic. So I'm trying to use all of my methods of communication to convey this issue to you tonight, because I just, you know, it is so shocking, and it is a crisis, and it is so important that we all take this so seriously. And so to illustrate this issue, you know, just to understand, we are capable of giving the next generation plastic, just passing it down through our bodies, passing down the chemicals in plastic in human breast milk. It is really a time that our bodies have been taken over by dangerous chemicals, and it's not going to have a good effect on us. We can look to our non-human kin to see the extent of the problems, but we see, you know, obviously a whole range of issues as I've described, and it's so urgent. And again, we should not have these chemicals in these products, but it's cheaper to go for plastic and to go for these petrochemicals. And so to some extent, we're all exposed, but a disproportionate level of exposure falls on frontline communities. The average person in the US produces about 5 pounds of trash per day, and the amount of trash we produce continues to increase as we consume material items at unprecedented rates. So we will only continue to see more and more plastic in our environment and our bodies as the plastic piling up all around us just breaks up into smaller pieces. This is a horrifying prospect if we consider that there's been more than 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic ever produced in the world. And that's a number that keeps rising by a rate of about 340 million metric tons a year. That is a lot of plastic. And that's just plastic. So all wastes are in the unbelievable number range. I mean, I don't think I could even begin to convey the scale of this issue, except if you could go to the frontline communities and see the waste piling up, I think you will start to get an idea. Next slide, please. The story of our throwaway culture in society is not just one of these myriad and urgent, widespread ecological and health issues, which are all interrelated. Again, pollution harms us all, but my main message for you tonight is that pollution harms some people more than others. And I'm also wanting to mention frontline communities at the front of the plastic pipeline and the waste pipeline. And these are folks who live near the places where these material items and petrochemicals are produced and processed. And we call this the front of the pipe. But again, we need to acknowledge the full range of injustice which occurs in relation to waste. So that is for the production of these items that are eventually disposed, to the actual use and disposal. You know, we're talking about dangerous waste by rail hubs, landfills, incinerators, recycling plants, where little plastic or other items are usually recycled, illegal dumps, and waste transfer stations. And pollution sources include these oil and gas extraction sites as well. And so we need to think about the full range of the full life cycle of the items that we use every day, because I don't think many of us look at a plastic cup or a plastic straw and think about the people who are affected along the pathway of that item. But I'm here tonight to try to encourage you to do that. I think it will really shape the way that you interact with the items around you and see the world. At least it has helped me to consider the human toll, because it's not so apparent. And I think that the more that we talk about this issue and normalize conversations about environmental justice, the better. I just hope that it's part of every conversation about waste. So I'm adding that in there. But I want to also talk about, you know, what is the solution? So where do we go from here? Well, we need to also focus on accountability, as I mentioned previously, and know that companies dealing in plastics and other disposable materials, as well as the petrochemicals needed to produce and transport these materials, and the waste haulers involved in shipping waste around and dealing with waste, make fortunes off of others' misfortunes. We also need to acknowledge that this waste empire is built on stolen land. We need to recognize that industrial developments have displaced entire communities, and complicit dysfunctional government representatives have and continue to allow racist colonial industrial zoning processes and policies to perpetuate a wider culture of oppression that they perceive themselves to benefit from, apparently, or why would they keep doing it? And how does this happen? Well, industrial activities, waste, and infrastructure have long been enmeshed in colonial capitalist and racist ideologies, and we need solutions. So we really need to shift these fundamental systems that we've seen historically for centuries. You know, it's the same broken values that are perpetuated, and it really is time for a shift. And waste, I think, is an issue that is so far-reaching and touches all of us, and that it is linked to so much injustice also means that there is a possibility for so much justice on the flip side of it. And we need awareness, we need education. That's why I'm sharing so much information with you tonight. It's not to overwhelm you, it's to arm you with tools that can help achieve solutions. So we're not commonly taught, you know, these fundamental truths. You know, we're told by industries and governments that we should just recycle our waste and the problem will go away. And that's clearly not the case. It's this rapid and unfolding problem that's only getting worse as corporations drive us to consume more. There's only more and more waste being produced, and more communities that are being harmed, unfortunately. And so we failed to receive the decency of transparency and respect that we deserve as individuals when our representatives who benefit from property tax dollars and other incentives paid by industries were failed by the industries themselves, who are kind of persuading us to purchase as much stuff as possible without being transparent or open about the consequences, the far-ranging consequences. And we're rarely, if ever, told that pollution is a serious problem. We're told that it's a consequence of jobs. It's inevitable. It's progress. It's not that harmful, but that's just simply not the truth. So as misinformation is spread by industries and complicit governments, we need to recognize that Black, Brown, Indigenous, low-income, and rural communities have routinely been gaslit or ignored, even by their own municipal leaders, who might have been able to help them by blocking industrial development, tightening pollution regulations, taking legal actions, and shutting it all down. And again, many communities on the front lines of the waste crisis have been speaking out for many decades, but people who could have helped our wider society have refused to listen. Systemic racism is ingrained in our culture, but we can dismantle the toxic hold it has on our lives. In order to arrive at real solutions to our urgent waste crisis, we must confront the fact that pollution is injustice. We must swiftly, equitably, and respectfully, with frontline communities' leadership and direction, implement effective and safe zero waste systems that do not harm humans nor the planet. We do not have time to be distracted by industries and government's false solutions, like shipping waste to historically underserved communities elsewhere. Consumer industries have long ignored the issue of waste and injustice, as these throwaway values are fundamental to their business models. If you think about it, disposable goods are the perfect consumer item. They have to be bought over and over again since they are used once or twice before being discarded. Next slide, please. If you think about it, disposable goods, also if you think about it, these industries need to be held accountable for building systemic oppression. And as explained, we cannot recycle our way out of the waste crisis. Requiring corporations to eliminate wasteful products is important. Chemical safety rules must be tightened and enforced. Intergovernmental conventions have already been used successfully to address other types of hazardous pollution, including toxic persistent chemicals like DDT. The UN in 2021 called attention to plastics and other waste as an urgent human rights issue. This year, it convened a committee to draw up a global treaty on plastics within the next 2 years. How that treaty is shaped is super critical, and ensuring environmental justice must be a core part of the purpose of any such agreement. And the petrochemical industry cannot continue to exist if we seriously want to address environmental injustice, climate change, and our waste crisis. Nor can we continue to afford not to reuse, repair, refill, and share. These are all positive values that can cut waste, and frontline communities have shown us that we can lead the way. We can create zero waste systems. We can share information that enables and empowers individuals and communities. And we can rise up against the broken systems that are trying to keep us down. Communities are creating gardens, composting programs, zero waste meetings to share tips and information, and other tools for making this most noble shift. They're also pressing their representatives and industrial groups to take accountability for the mess they have created. In these ways, by being involved, by thinking circularly, by calling for accountability, we can foster the values in our society that we want to see in the systems around us. Thank you all tonight.
Thank you for that sobering presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce our next panelist, who is Monique Fitzgerald. She is a tribal member of the Settlecot Nation, a nation traditionally based in the North Shore of Suffolk County, and was born and raised in North Belport. Her past work has been at the grassroots level, organizing and advocating for the North Bellport community and communities with similar socioeconomic demographics. She is one of the co-founders of the Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group, also known as BLARG, a working group that's laser focused on exposing, stopping, and rectifying the harm caused by the Brookhaven landfill. Also, Monique is a climate justice organizer at the Long Island Progressive Coalition. As a person living in a community on the front line of the climate crisis, Monique brings firsthand experience of what climate justice is not, and what it could be.
Hi, thank you, Matthew, for that introduction. So that helps me skip a couple of things that I needed to say in the beginning. And thank you to Erica for that presentation before me. It's great to follow you in your work. So I appreciate you. And also Abena, is great to be on this panel. Thank you for the invite and thinking of me as one of the people here on Long Island to tell this story. So I am, like Matthew said, Monique Fitzgerald. I use the pronouns she and her. I am a Black and Indigenous woman. I have medium length hair and currently it's red. And I'm a tribal and council member of the Settlecott Nation. I want to acknowledge that I am talking to you from Unkachug Nation land. And I want to also acknowledge the connected struggle between First Nations and Black people here on Long Island. So our struggles have first been met with us since the times of 1492 and colonialism and 1619 and the transatlantic slave trade. I want to acknowledge that through those struggles, we have managed and persevered, and we are still here, surviving and thriving. I want to also acknowledge that we are 368 years minus 2 days from the date that the land stewarded by the Settlecott Nation was stolen and claimed as what we now call the town of Brookhaven. So the town of Brookhaven claims their establishment April 14th, 1655, a day of loss for our nation. I come to this work from the perspective of a personal account of how colonialism, racism, capitalism, blockbusting, and environmental racism culminated to form a 270-foot monster on our backs and on the backs of the 11,000 folks who live in North Bellport, as well as the people who live and work in the hamlets of Brookhaven, Yaphank, Medford, the neighbors that shoulder the brunt of the Brookhaven landfill. And more specifically, I came to this work in the spring and summer of 2020. After the murder of George Floyd, our community joined the global outcry to protect Black lives. We organized protests and community discussions. We wanted our protests and organization to be acts of solidarity and to reflect the ways that Black lives needed protection in our own hometown. One of those most glaring testaments to the attack on Black lives is the 270-foot monster that we call the Brookhaven landfill. In the eyes of many living under its blockade, we have had who have had their health negatively impacted. We have heard reports of the toxins of the landfill leaking into our water systems, or our water system, that teachers, staff, and children were getting sick, and workers were getting sick, and the stench of the landfill, especially on a hot summer day, was unbearable, or is unbearable. We've also been under the broken promises of our town representatives, promising to close and reimagine the space that the landfill occupies. So our group of protesters, of community members, huddled together and formed a working group called the Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group to protect Black lives and to address the needs of our community. Our group is dedicated to environmental justice, which means we don't want this landfill here or anywhere else. We are not a NIMBY group. We do not support plans for our waste to be exported off island to anyone else's backyard. We believe that as a society, we can return to sustainable practices that many of our grandparents and great-grandparents used to treat every product and/or material as valuable and find use for that material beyond the primary use. Basically, we now call this process upcycling or zero waste strategies. Strategies our grandparents and ancestors were experts of doing. So where does BLARG fit in the world of plastic? Through our meetings and our discussions and our attempts to reach our representatives, we have come to find out that we cannot wait for solutions to be delivered to us. We must go after those solutions. And so we have been actively going after those solutions. And two of those high priority solutions were what's in our waste stream and how can we get things out of our waste stream? So the attempt to answer the first question, what's in our waste stream, we decided to conduct visual waste audit in the garbage districts of the town of Brookhaven. Under the guidance of one of our great BLARG members, Gabrielle Houston, and various allies, in the fall of 2021, we conducted these waste audits and found interesting details about our waste stream. One of which is that much of our waste is plastic. And much of that plastic is not even what they call recyclable. Even things that were or deemed recyclable, we have little faith that they actually will get recycled at all. Then the question is, where does this recycling happen and who does the recycling and how? And the questions continue to mount. All of these questions, including more questions on the front end of the plastic journey to our waste stream, all have a common theme. And that common theme is environmental racism. There is no point on the plastic journey where environmental racism isn't prevalent. There is no point on the plastic journey where people are safe. So to the second question of how do we get things out of our waste stream, we answered this by starting a 90-day pilot program called the Anti-Landfill Community Composting Pilot Program that we started in the summer of 2021. In that program, we were able to choose 20 families who were interested in starting this pilot program with us, and we began composting every Saturday in the summer and fall of 2021. It was a great time, a great place to reach out to community, to be active in the community, to have our presence felt in the community. It was a great time to share space and to discuss things that we needed to discuss further, whether it was in the realm of plastics or garbage, or just to be mindful of how people are feeling through this process. So that has been one of the things that we have done in BLARG. So we are still continuing those programs. We still are looking to continue both the waste audit and the composting program. But I know that we have limited time here, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I will leave you with a few thoughts to ponder first. Many of our BLARG members and allies are true warriors and are on this call right now. So I want to acknowledge that I see you and feel your presence. And second, with the idea of plastics and how we treat the idea of what is disposable, I also want you to think about, in this system of environmental racism, the question is also, who is disposable? And I won't answer that question, but I hope that you will. And last, we named our composting program the Anti-Landfill Community Composting Program because of our need to address environmental racism and name the thing that we needed to name. And also from the quote from civil rights auntie in my head, Angela Davis, in a racist society, it's not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monique, for sharing this story and this mission with us tonight. And now it's a pleasure to introduce Maria Gonzalez-Prescod. Maria is a community education advocate in Brentwood, New York. As a former PTA vice president, she touched the lives of many Brentwood families. She continues this work of advocacy and stewardship as a trustee of Brentwood Union Free School District. Ms. Gonzalez-Prescod has been working with school board officials, parents, and lawmakers to address the impact of the proposed Omni Waste Transfer Station on the families and children of Brentwood. I'll now introduce Maria Gonzalez-Prescod.
Hi, hello everyone. How are you? I am, like it was mentioned, I am Maria Gonzalez-Prescod. I am a mother and a community individual in the Brentwood School District. And also, I lived in the North Bay Shore area of the Brentwood School District, where we are predominantly Black and Brown community, and a community that basically we are being targeted, I feel, in regards to this Omni transfer station coming into our community. I was born in Puerto Rico. I came here when I was 7 years old. I am a Stony Brook alumni, class of 2003. And I am a school board member, but I feel that I'm also a voice for the community at large, because, you know, like communities of colors, I don't think people know how to speak up. And, you know, and when we have a platform on the school board, I think that we are using our platform to advocate for our community. I would like to play a video in regards to our Anna Fernandes could not be here today, so I just wanted to play that video for me. Can we hear it?
I think you may need to share audio.
Waste transfer station will lay waste to their quiet community. News 12's environmental reporter Danielle Campbell has the story.
Anna Fernandes has lived on Suffolk Avenue in Brentwood since 1971 and has seen many changes roll through her neighborhood over the years. Most of them, she says, not positive. And if a proposed waste transfer station down the block gets the green light from the town of Islip and the state, Fernandes and her neighbors fear there will be a caravan of tractor trailers loaded with trash careening down their street. The Brentwood neighborhood borders on an industrial area where Omni Recycling is seeking permission to build a mega solid waste processing plant here on MJ Boulevard. According to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, each day the plant would handle 2,300 tons of construction and demolition debris, as well as solid waste.
This is a catastrophe for our neighborhood, for our children, for the environment.
Fernandes and her neighbors, as well as local leaders, call it a social justice issue.
Every time they just dump in Brentwood. It's just not fair.
I'm sorry that the communities out east are having a problem with garbage, but you're not going to come to Brentwood and dump it here.
Robert Feliciano, president of the Brentwood Board of Education, says the district is opposed to the facility, which would be 2 miles from the district schools. It was back in 2013 when a fire destroyed another waste processing facility that was owned by another company on this site.
We were very pleased when that transfer station burnt down.
This transfer station is not going to come here without a fight.
We're tired of it. We want the town to be on our side.
Danielle Campbell, News 12, Long Island.
Sorry, thank you. So according to the Department of Conservation, the Omni Recycling is one of the Long Island's biggest waste processing companies. Omni will bring over 250 semi-trucks, 28 trucks in 1 hour through the Regis Park area of the Brentwood community with over 2,300 tons of construction and demolition debris daily, as well as solid waste. From 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week. The Regis Park area is a residential neighborhood made of predominantly Black and Hispanic community members in our Brentwood area. Yeah, this really will mean, the smell, noise, pollution, traffic. After many attempts from residents to stop the project at the town of Islip hearings, Suffolk County hearings, over 2,000 change.org petition signatures from the town of Brentwood residents. New York State DEC approved the waste transfer station during the height of the COVID pandemic in 2021. New York State DEC did not hear community concerns after many attempts to, after many conferences and attempts to stop the project. In May 2021, it's funny because I ran into New York State Attorney General Letitia James at her press conference at the Roberto Clemente Park in Brentwood about a dumping, illegal dumping that occurred at the park. And she announced that the cleanup efforts that were made and the arrests that occurred. Very, lovely lady. And she spoke about the environmental injustices that occurred with the illegal dumping at the park. I mean, after the press conference, usually, you have a photo opportunity. So I did go up to her and I spoke to her about the Omni transfer station issues within our community unofficially with Ms. James during a photo opportunity. And she said she was against the project. And I did tell her that it was already approved and, she didn't know. How can she speak about the environmental injustices at the park, but allow a waste transfer station to come into a community of color? She agreed. She said, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And she said she will investigate. I'm not a public speaker at all. Honestly, But, if no matter what, even if your, your voice shakes, you can always speak your mind. A couple board members actually, during the time of the summer of 2021, me included, we went to door at the Regis Park area of Brentwood to get community members to sign on as plaintiffs with the Brentwood School District to fight against the project. And soon New York State, we announced it in August 21 that basically after a unanimous vote with the school board that we said, yes, we're going to sue New York State. The board felt that we are a voice for the Brentwood community, and we have a platform. And, we also have our legal team, which is great because, that helps the community of, a low income community to at least have a voice. Not only the Omni transfer station will impact the school district, our community, our way of life of Brentwood, traffic, environmental effects, but it also will impact the education of our students. Even with the traffic delays of 200 and 250 trucks a day, our students' education will be impacted because, our students will not be able to get us to school on time. And I think that was the main issue that we were able to use to bring in the lawsuit, like how it will impact the school district. The New York State Attorney General, from that little conversation I had at the park, decided that she was not going to legally represent the New York State DEC in court. The New York State agency had to get their own legal counsel, which is one of the first in New York State, that has occurred. The Brentwood Board of Education has also reached out to our local county and state representatives for assistance, as well as the Long Island NAACP and the national NAACP. The Brentwood, New York State Assemblyman Phil Ramos, we also reached out to him. He has been a true advocate, side by side with the school district to fight against not only Omni transfer station, but is also currently working on legislation in New York State that increase the protection for communities of color throughout New York State against environmental injustices that occur very frequently. The Brentwood Union Free School District versus the New York State DEC case is still pending, and we are still in court, and the Omni transfer station is already built and business can start at any day now. Even though the project has been approved, we are still seeking help, or any type of help that we can get for the residents of the Regis Park area of Brentwood to decrease the impact of the project to our everyday lives. We ultimately, we feel that, Long Island, we're no longer going to be Long Island's dumping ground here in Brentwood. I think that, within our community, we're done. Like someone mentioned earlier, we are constantly being dumped on, and, this needs to be stopped. So, thank you.
Thank you to Ms. Gonzalez-Prescod for your advocacy work and for your impactful presentation. Next, we will hear from Nicole John Christian. Ms. Christian is President Emeritus of the Greater Gordon Heights Chamber of Commerce, Chair of the Brookhaven NAACP Environmental Justice and Climate Change and Membership Committees, and founder of eMERGE, which stands for Empowering Minorities Through Education, Research, Government, and Enterprise. A resident of Coram/Gordon Heights, she received her Bachelor of Business Administration degree from Marymount University in Virginia and a Master's of Public Administration degree from George Mason University in Virginia.
I think we may have lost Miss Christian for a minute. So while she tries to log back on, I want to just take a second to thank our speakers. This has been a heavy conversation, and I'm feeling all of the heaviness of the stories that each of them has brought. I also want to thank all of you for being here and being willing and ready to receive these stories and these facts. So I do not see Miss Christian. She was on the call, but she may have had some technical issues and dropped off. So what we're going to do at this point is open up the floor for questions. Please take a minute and start to type your questions into the chat. And I will start with a first question for Erica, for Monique, for Maria. Can you just reflect on some of the other testimonies, some of the other information you've heard this evening? Part of why I brought us all together was because in this environmental justice work, we are oftentimes doing our own thing. And we know that environmental justice, environmental racism is a Long Island-wide issue. So as we connect together, as we come together today, can you just reflect on this experience of hearing from others who are fighting this fight from their own location?
I guess I'll start. So I really appreciate the space that was created here. What I like the most is the fact that we get to be in community with each other. It's a long time coming that we have been able to connect with the folks in Brentwood regarding the Omni Waste Transfer Station since the story broke, that at least that we became aware of it within our group. Our hearts and our spirit has been with you all. So I don't know if you have felt the love we've been sending, but I'm here to say that we are in solidarity with the work that you're doing in Brentwood. And definitely to Erica, you definitely inspired me through your book. That if anyone hasn't read Thicker Than Water, please get a copy. I actually have an extra one if anybody would like to take me up on my extra book offer. So you came to a Zoom symposium and you might leave with a book.
Thank you, Monique. Erica jumping in here. I'll just, repeat these sentiments too, and just say that I'm so grateful to hear these stories. It's also just, unbelievable how interconnected our stories are, and we are living on one island and facing maybe different issues, but they're all interrelated. And I think there's just a lot of empathy in this room tonight, and power in knowing that we're not alone in this struggle. And I think it's also so inspiring to share our stories because, as Abena mentioned, a lot of these efforts are going on in communities, and communities are addressing the issues, right in front of us. But we're also all working towards this wider systemic change. And I think, just keeping in contact and allyship with communities is also important, and having amazing events like this that do connect people to maybe communities and organizations that maybe they weren't aware of, and getting people involved. So that's really wonderful too. So just yeah, feeling so grateful to be here tonight.
I just wanted to say I'm very glad that I was invited to come here. You know, as a parent, I have 2 children within the school district. But not only that, I live here. I've been living here since I bought my home when I was 23 years old in the North Bay Shore area. And I always wanted my children to live or have the same opportunity that any child in Long Island, no matter where they are. You know, I don't want them to, that I'm, you know, driving down the street and all they see is garbage, you know, and it impacts their mind. It impacts their you know, their future. You know, we had gang issues. I mean, we have still some gang issues, but at the same area right then and there where they're trying to put that waste transfer station, you talking about they found bodies of our students in that same area. So that, you know, alone impacts me as a mother. You know, we no longer want to see this within our community. So yes, I'm greatly appreciative of this meeting because of the fact that, you know, we do have to have these conversations. Erica mentioned about the plastic within our bodies and our babies. And I'm like, wow, you know, something new that I didn't know. And I will be going back to our superintendent and, you know, plastic-free zone. I don't know. We have to start that even within our own school district. You know, we're the biggest school district on Long Island. You talk about almost 20,000 students. And we start, you know, just making a little footprint here and there in each and every school. I think that will make an impact. But thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for those rich responses. And presciently, I want to announce that the wonderful student co-sponsors of this event are holding a workshop about plastic advocacy for high school students throughout Long Island at the end of this month. So save that date, Saturday, May 28th. Everybody who is registered for this call is going to get more information about that. We want people who are connected to our school districts as parents, as trustees, find the students who are invested and let us do this. I love that idea about a plastic-free zone. I want to acknowledge that Miss Jean Christian is back on the call with us from the Brookhaven NAACP. So in the time that we have left, I want to turn the floor over to her because the Brookhaven NAACP has been a key part of this EJ fight within Long Island. So the floor is yours. Nicole.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay, Dr. Asari?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. I'm on the move. As you all know, the work of the NAACP never ends. I'm here in the absence of our president, Dr. Georgette Grier-Key. I want to thank the panelists and I want to thank the organizers and particularly the student leaders that put this event together tonight. I won't be before you long, just a little bit about what we're doing and what we can do more together. I'm here from the NAACP Brookhaven Town Unit 2133, and we are the nation's oldest and boldest civil rights organization. We're working hard across the country to ensure civil rights for all people, of course, but particularly in this prescient issue of climate change and environmental justice. There is strength in numbers, there is strength in information, and there is strength in coalition building. Climate change and environmental justice has taken center stage in Brookhaven, as you all know, and how eloquently Dr. Asari laid the foundation and told the narrative and story of what so many of us have been experiencing in the town of Brookhaven for decades. The town of Brookhaven has been dumping waste, power plants, and a variety of diminishing quality of life, diminishing activity on the backs of Blacks, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color. We are united with BLARG, other community organizations in Islip, Queens, Brooklyn, and across the Northeast to make sure that we expose, highlight, and challenge the current state of affairs as it relates to climate change and waste, quote unquote, waste management. We believe that this land is ours, it's yours, it's all of ours to steward properly. We must unite to ensure transparent and equitable, inclusive environmental justice and climate change policies. We support more responsible and sustainable waste and climate change solutions that includes and highlights the health and equitable treatment of all people that live here. We are actively working with all of you to advocate, problem solve, and work towards methods as we speak to ensure that we all have the highest quality of life. We know that environmental justice is nothing new. Flint, Michigan is still very present in our minds. It is not a memory. We know what happened with Hurricane Katrina and even Superstorm Sandy right here on Long Island. This is a fight that we can win. And when we fight as the NAACP, we win. We encourage you all to continue to share information, to include us in your discussions. We are waging a battle in the courts, on the streets, and in the legislative bodies. Don't give up. Hold these leaders accountable and always know that the nation's oldest and boldest civil rights organization stands with you. Thank you so much for tonight. I'm Nicole Christian, the chair of Climate Change and Environmental Justice Committee for the Brookhaven Town NAACP. Thank you so much. I'll be here for the remainder. If anyone wants to talk, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jean Christian. We needed that word from the NAACP. We needed the encouragement. And as I said, when you look at the fight against waste injustice within Suffolk County, the work that the Brookhaven NAACP is doing and has been doing is really worth taking a look at. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here and for all of that work. We have just a few minutes for questions. So please do put in your question or your comment into the chat box. I see that the chat box is rich. There are lots of good ideas there. Connections are being made. So this is wonderful. Whenever there are students in the audience, I like to make space for questions. So we'll take a few minutes and have time perhaps for one or two questions. So I see one question in the chat from Emily Burns, who is a student in my Human Rights and Africa class. Hello, Emily. The question which is being asked is, why is the issue of waste disposal made a burden to the less affluent areas when the waste is coming from the more affluent areas, right? Why is there this disparity we are seeing within Long Island? Who would like to take that question?
I'll take a little stab at it. Not to say that I could answer it in totality, but it's partly what the thought that I left with you all at the end of my talk was, who is deemed disposable? And in a society, a racist society, people are put in these categories of disposability. And so areas such as North Belport, where people are disenfranchised through many different systems and many different reasons, there's little ways to fight against big money interest or affluent areas. So our community becomes a community that is deemed disposable. You know, North Belport was created in such a way that sort of putting all of the Black and Indigenous folks in a particular area so that this type of racism can happen easier. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it speaks to it.
Very well said, Monique. And if I could just add, I wish that Dr. Key was here. This is really her area of expertise. She is not only just the president of our unit and also a professor at Medgar Evers, but also she was a licensed real estate broker for over 20 years. And you have to look at the history of redlining and gerrymandering. And as the sister Monique just shared, most of this was purposeful. And we have to face that very difficult fact that what has happened to us politically, geopolitically, and otherwise with the way we live and where we live was purposeful. So we have to continue with our truth telling. We have to continue telling the truth about what happened from the 1617, the founding of the town of Brookhaven, all the way through to the way that they have sliced and diced our community so that we do not have a collective block of voting power. And that's a whole nother discussion that I've had with Dr. Asari repeatedly, but that's just a small portion of the issue, Emily, is the historical regional organization and distribution of populations and people on Long Island. This was supposed to be a suburb where everyone came to get away from the other. And we have to confront that reality. We were done this way on purpose. We have to undo what was done purposely. And that's something that you do legislatively, you do it in the community, and you do it this way through science and commitment and collective truth telling. So it's all of those things. So thank you very much. Excellent, excellent question.
Thank you. That is the note on which to end through science and community and truth telling. And that is what we have seen on display tonight so beautifully. Thank you to all of our speakers for taking time to share with us tonight. Thank you to every participant that logged in. It was important for you to be here so that you could get this message. Thank you again to the Humanities Institute, the Safina Center, the Department of Africana Studies. We will be in touch with all of you with future events as we address this environmental justice, as we address this waste crisis together. Thank you and good night.